What's going on, guys? 2012 Kia Sportage. It's got 68,000 miles on it. I have the dreaded steering issue. A lot of people call it notchy steering. And what this one is doing is at low speeds, if you're maybe cornering into a curve, it just kind of wants to overcorrect a little bit. You have to kind of bring it back to center. And it won't, like if you go into a curve and let go of the wheel, it won't self-center back. You have to actually put just a little pressure on it. But one thing that really aggravates me is highway speeds. If you're out holding the wheel, you know, at 80 miles an hour on the interstate, you just need to make a very light correction, you know, to stay in center. It'll overcorrect just a little bit. You can tell the steering, the power engages and just overcorrects, which then you have to bring it back to the center to correct it. And that pattern just wears me out. So I have a theory. And I don't know if it'll help or not, but this rack and pinion steering, I'm gonna try to grease it. And you can see that boot right. So behind that boot on both sides should be there's a steering shaft in, and those are greased. But if the grease is dried up or there's not enough grease, maybe that electric steering module is having to put a little too much power into it until it breaks free. Or maybe the issue where it won't return to center is that steering sticking because of lack of grease. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I tried to search online. There's nothing on there that I can find about greasing the steering. I'm gonna get the car up on jack stands and get the front wheels off, see what we're in for. So what I mean about this notchy steering, I'm just sitting here with the car off, but traveling down the interstate at maybe 70 or 80, and this is basically what I'm having to do. If you watch my hand, and it's not that I'm having to make the correction, I'm just holding it in place, holding it on the road. But then when it feels like when the steering senses that I'm putting pressure on it, it feels like that electric module is engaging too much power, and when it does, I have to overcorrect. I have to catch the overcorrection and put the car back straight. So it's nothing that I'm doing or having to do. Initially, I'm just holding it on the road, but if I put just a little bit of pressure, it'll overcorrect and I have to bring it back. I hope that makes sense, and if you have the same problem, then that should make sense to you. All right, so I have it on jack stands. I have one wheel off to see what I'm up against. And there's no way to get my hand in there all the way to the back to where that clamp is at. About the only way to do it, if this is even possible, is to come under the car and you can get to it. So I'm able to now get my hand on it. But it's got those band type clamps on it, so I'm gonna have to get that off. There's a little rise there, little hump, you got to pull it over. Okay. So that grease feels sticky and tacky. and very thin layer. Got a ball joint there too. May need some. Yeah. Guys, I really think that it's gonna need some grease. We're gonna grease it. I think there's enough tackiness there that it could be sticking. But you see that gear there, so that gear, even with tacky grease, really shouldn't cause it to be notchy, I wouldn't think. We're gonna go ahead and grease it up. Now I need to figure out what type of grease to use. I've read that you need to use graphite grease on rack and pinion steering. I've read that to use high temp grease. We just need to make sure we use something that's not going to get sticky. So let me do a little more research there, and then we'll go to the parts store. Okay, I'm back from O'Reilly's, and I got the CV joint boot clamp pliers, because I think I can reuse my old clamp. These were 12 bucks. Not very high quality, but we just need them to work for a couple of times. So if I can reuse my old clamps, then and the problem with these is going to be getting an angle where I can get them on there. But O'Reilly's didn't have any new clamps. They just had the larger ones that fit the CV joints, and they didn't have the smaller ones for the steering boot. And so as a backup, I got these. These are stainless steel hose clamps. These are not ideal, not recommended for the steering boot, but the steering boot's a non-rotating part, and the end that we're putting it on doesn't move at all. So if these aren't too wide, they will work. I think some people that I read that you don't use these because vibrations make them come loose. But they sell some identical to these, made for them. But they have a spring in here that keeps it tight, keeps that nut from backing off. But again, this is last resort, and hopefully these pliers, if I can get them in there, we can reuse our old clamps. I don't know how much of that you can see where I have the angle of that camera, but I just took my hand and greased it up really well. It's a lot better than it did. I also greased this joint right here. See that joint? So that rack is out as far as it'll go. So I'll turn it the opposite direction when I do the other side. Make sure we get as much of that shaft lubed as we can. I'm gonna need both hands for this, so I'm not gonna be able to film it. All right, I got it back on there, and I think that band's gonna be okay if I can get the tool on it. That angle, I don't think I can get the tool on it. Well, actually, I know I can't. Yep, I can't get the tool on it, guys. I was able to tighten it with a pair of needle nose and then take the tool and come in sideways and clamp it. That is not the way it's supposed to work. But It is very tight. And there's no way it's coming off. So, not advisable, but that worked. You might not do what I just did. I think it's gonna be okay. All right, so on the passenger side, this heat shield is gonna have to come off. I have no way to get in there to that clamp. It's still gonna be tough with this muffler in the way. So I'm gonna remove this heat shield. Looks like there's 3 10mm bolts. All right, so now we have access to that clamp. There it goes. All right. Oh, guys, this one here is completely dry. I don't know if you can see that, but there is no grease on this one. Yeah, there's no grease on that whatsoever. I'll try to get you a better look from the other side. My wife's over here laughing at me because I said we was going to have to work really hard to get it off. She thinks that's funny. If you're doing this on an older vehicle or one with more usage, your boots may crack on you. I'm still worried about this one possibly cracking because it's not as pliable on the ends. Look in there, folks. There is no grease on that shaft. It is dry. Just like a bare piece of steel. Dry as a bone. I'm not going to film me putting grease on it. I'm just going to get some gloves on, squirt the grease in my hands, and just grease that shaft up really well. Alright guys, it has grease on it now. One of the reasons on the other side I had a problem pulling this boot back up to clamp it, because it had tension on it, was I still had the wheel turned, so it's fully extended. This time when I put this boot back on, I'll straighten the wheels out. I'll take the pressure off this boot. I won't have to work as hard to get it pulled up on. That'll make it easier. Okay, so the clamp looks pretty good. Try to get this tool on it. No. For one thing, this is a cheap tool. And now what's happening, I really don't have a clearance up top, but it'll barely go on there. But the clamp is, this tool's too shallow. I'm gonna do the same thing I did on the other side. I'm just gonna use needle nose pliers and clamp it. Alright guys, I had to re-engineer these clamps, but it's tight. It's not coming off there. It's just tighter than it was. And it's in the groove, in the channel all the way around. Alright, I'm gonna get that heat shield back on, and then we're almost done. Then don't forget this slip ring. Goes on the other end of the boot. I'm gonna work the wheel back and forth a few times and then go under and check those boots again, make sure everything's holding. All right, so we're put back together. About to take her down the road and see how she does. I'll be able to tell the difference on at high speed, so we'll go out to the interstate. But like right here, you were saying it wouldn't return to center, right?
Right. You were fighting against it.
Yeah. See, doing like it should now. I think it feels better to me at low speed already.
At low speed, that's still over the speed limit.
Am I going over the speed limit?
Yeah, you've been going over the speed limit.
No, it feels better so far. This will be the test. Oh, it's better.
Is it?
It is better. So before, when I had to just barely put some input into it, it would overcorrect.
Yes.
It's not doing that now. That fixed it. Definitely better, but certainly not notchy like it was, like aggravating. Corrected. None of that. Well, we're about to take a, what, 2,000 mile trip, round trip? Probably more.
I don't know. A long ways.
Yeah, so we're in Northwest Arkansas. We're leaving this weekend. We're going to Nashville, then to Atlanta, back over to Alabama, and come back through Mississippi. Yeah, we've done this trip a couple of times to see family. It's always 2,000, 2,100 miles. So, yeah, I don't even notice it now. Very good. Well, I'll wait and post the video after the trip so I can say 100% that this fixed my particular issue I was having. So we're about 300 miles into our trip, getting close to Memphis, and the steering 100% is better. It started loosening up more. The sticky feeling is all gone away, and as far as that notchy feel, it's not here anymore. And my wife drove the car too. She's the one that noticed it more at low speeds and curves, and she noticed a difference immediately. So, you know, I don't know if you have the same issue. You know, I'm at 70 miles an hour right now. Not having to make corrections. It just feels normal. All right, guys, to finish this video up, I'm back in Arkansas now. The whole trip was about 2,100, maybe 2,200 miles. And I can tell you 100% for me, greasing the steering boots corrected most of my issues with the steering with this Kia. I want to back up a little to describe, instead of a notchy feeling, I want to call it a sticky feeling that I was having. And if you have the same issue, you know what I'm talking about. People describe it notchy and sticky, and for me they're two different things. So the sticky feeling for me that completely went away is when at highway speed and you're on the road and you make a mild correction, but the steering wheel kind of sticks for a minute and then you have to overcorrect. Now that was exaggerated, but you know what I'm talking about. And the notchy feeling is every now and then, and I think this is inherent to the Kia, you just get a little pulse in the steering wheel, a little notch. And mainly for me it's at lower speeds on back roads and things like that. And I think that's just the Kia electric steering, and I think it's inherent to the Kia. So I still have that every now and then, but certainly the sticky feeling is gone. And you know, I could hold the car on the road, on the interstate, traveling for 8 and 10 hours a day driving, and there is no issue out there at all anymore. And before it was constant sticky, and it was horrible to drive. But you know, it worked for me. I'm not advocating that you go pull down your steering boots and put grease in there. I'm not saying that's the fix. Certainly seek a professional, talk to your mechanic. And you know, I doubt the Kia dealership's going to help you any, because they're, you know, there's nothing, you know, it's not a recall or anything on it. But for me, it worked. I just wanted to share my experiences with you. That's going to be the end of the video, and thanks for watching. If I helped you, give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. See you guys next time.